Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Can you start over?
No. No, let's let the people know we're human.
Joe. Power through.
We have all the
Allan
faith in the
coughed
world.
the second we went live on the air. Anyway, I'm today we're joining you from the ShadowCon cleanup party, and I've already found some pretty good stuff. Okay. I've already found a couple of swords under the table there. A couple of
there are a lot of things you just don't need to touch.
Some old beard trimmings that I don't want to see. Yeah.
They're not old.
Gloves.
Okay.
Gloves. Need
Anyway,
gloves.
what a this thing's never going to be approved by Danny Bruns. But anyway, welcome to Geek Tank Radio,
Hey,
everybody.
she knew what she was getting into when she agreed to put us over on this station.
Okay. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and the coughing Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And we were at the day after ShadowCon is always interesting. You know, my recommendation, go through the parking lot with like a metal detector or just go through the nooks and crannies of the ballroom. You don't know what you might find.
I'm going to give everybody out there.
You don't know who you might find.
Yeah.
I'm giving everybody out there a serious tip on life in Memphis.
Okay.
Never go through a parking lot with a metal detector.
Okay.
You don't want to find what you're going to find.
That's probably a good point. But anyway, hey, I don't know what annual this was, but the ShadowCon's been around quite a while, and we were there this weekend.
82, yeah. It's been a minute.
Recovering nicely. And, they had some challenges this year because they didn't have the venue that they normally would have, so they had to go to the Travel Lodge over there in near Brooks Road. And they pulled it off. It was actually pretty comfortable over there. So hats off to Cliff and the gang, the SCA, for another successful ShadowCon weekend.
Hey, these guys have been running for 27 years. They have more than made up for how many venues they've had to take on because of whatever reason. We've had situations where the hotel pipes froze. We've had situations where you couldn't get to the hotel because of bridge construction. But these guys power through, and they always put on an awesome show.
When you run a convention in January in the Mid-South, you don't know whether you're going to be in shorts or a winter coat or a park. So,
and if your con goes more than one day, you might do both.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, but thanks, Cliff, and all the gang over there for another fun weekend at ShadowCon. Well, you guys, we have something a little later in the show. It's going to be music related. We're going to geek out on music a little. I'm not going to even tease it that much, but it's partly a generational thing. This is something that Max is, he's never, people of his generation don't have the same experience with music that we had. And we're going to, and he suddenly became aware of one of the experiences he was missing. And we're going to explore that when we come back. That's all I'll say about it. So. It's pretty interesting, I think. So, but Allan, you said something off the air, and this. Well, we knew we were going to discuss this anyway, but I don't want to steal your thunder. You said something pretty interesting about Rebel Moon, the Netflix series.
What, the show that's massively popular that everybody hates?
Yeah. It sounds like a Yogi Berra kind of thing. Nobody goes to Coney Island because it's too crowded.
But, exactly.
So I haven't watched it yet. I've seen enough spoilers about it that it's basically they're saying it's an edgier Star Wars with no sense of humor.
It is every space opera you've ever seen with hookers.
And it's Zack Snyder, so it's not going to be funny. And it's going to have...
What are you talking about? It's not going to be funny. Some of the greatest humor ever in a Zack Snyder movie.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Have you watched Army of the Dead?
Yeah.
No, I'm reporting on what I've heard about it. I'll watch it. I just haven't watched it yet.
You need to see it. It is, occasionally you run into a show where somebody gets unchained.
Wait, what?
Occasionally you get to a show where the people involved have been unchained. AKA, if you go make a MCU movie, they give you a box of chains and say you have to follow all these rules. If you make a DCU movie, you're going to be in XYZ show. Well, if you're going to be on Friends, then Friends has a certain panache that it stays with. In this case, you have all the familiar tropes, all the familiar genre. However, you're unchained because you don't have a pre-existing name on it.
Okay.
So it's not a movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's not a TV show about E.T.
We get it.
But
is this an original by Zack Snyder? So he wrote
all right.
directed.
So
because that's what I was wondering.
So here's the thing. When he was younger, he had an idea for a really dark and modernized pitch that he was always thinking of as being his Star Wars pitch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucasfilm's never going to let Zack Snyder touch anything.
Yeah.
Because he's not one of those guys who likes to play by the rules. And by him not playing by the rules, you got a good chunk of DCU where people are very divisive about it. But this was his Star Wars pitch, and he was apparently telling somebody in the next Netflix realm, when he went to work for them doing the Army of the Dead and the Army of Thieves movies, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll put the money behind that."
Yeah, when you get ready, call us.
Yeah, and he's like, "Okay, so it is from what it's been pitched as so far, it is a 2-movie event. This was movie 1. This is chapter 1."
What are people saying about the complaints I've heard are, okay, well,
it's just like so-and-so.
It's just, which to me, a lot of these people that say, hey, and you've seen these breakdown videos where they're like, basically, this is the Princess Leia motif. This is the lightsaber motif. And I'm like, a lot of that is just haters trying to show you how smart they are, but it doesn't mean it's a bad story.
It's not even haters. No, it's more along the lines of people who want to sound more important than they actually are talking about something. But when it comes down to it, everything you see in modern cinema or television or books or comics or anything else, that trope has been established long before. There's not really any original stories. All you do is pick and choose from all the different stories and see what kind of quilt you can make with different tropes. It's very rare to find something new.
All right, it's kind of like being Shakespeare, doing a Shakespeare play. It's been done. It's been done 1,000 times. Yet we have an entire Shakespeare troupe that every year you will go back to see A Midsummer Night's Dream
because
you want to see what Brandon does as Puck, as opposed to last year when Max was Puck.
Kind of like when they did that Leonardo DiCaprio movie with a modern version of Romeo and Juliet.
Right.
That was pretty interesting, actually.
It wasn't bad at all. It was well done.
Like Elementary or Sherlock, either one of those are their new takes on the Sherlock Holmes stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to continue. Boy, things are getting riled up, and we're going to continue here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Captain Kirk just swung a flying leg kick through his radio. The Geek Patrol is back.
But did it break? You know, those futuristic radios are pretty hardy. Titanium. Anyway,
I've seen that kick. Nothing broke.
Nothing broke. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about that show, Rebel Moon, which is a Netflix series. It's
not a series. It is a movie. It is a series of movies, but it's a movie. Trust me. I've already been yelled at about this, and
it's like Dune.
People
All right, it's the first movie of a series of movies. Well, how many does it say? How many there's going to be?
There's 2. It's chapter 1 and chapter 2 so far. If it does well, Netflix will throw more money at Zack Snyder. But no, I've already been chastised and beaten senseless verbally because I referred to it as a series.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it is just okay. I don't want to nitpick over that. I will say, when it first came out, when the trailer first dropped, I said, "This looks pretty cool." It looks. I didn't even associate it with Star Wars.
Right.
I think a lot of people just really try to reach. Especially these commentators on YouTube, they try to show you how smart they are. So they pick apart movies and compare them to. And that always sort of irritates me. A lot of people, bash movies or stories that are I don't want to say derivative, but they borrow elements from others. Doesn't mean it's a bad story though.
No.
I mean, like you said, but the one thing I am hearing is that some of the characters don't get to. Like, they introduce a character. They're pretty cool, but you don't learn anything about them, and they don't necessarily they don't have as much personality maybe as you like. It's kind of weird. In this movie, it sounds like they're gathering the team, right?
Well, right. So and I'll go ahead and pick on comics for a minute. I'm going to pull an Allan and pick on something.
Okay.
Anybody who is worth their salt, who reads comics, who's actually paid attention, knows that first issue, that first chapter, is all about establishing your premise.
Okay.
There may not be a whole lot of action. There may not be a whole lot of character development. But what it does is it introduces you to the world, kind of gets you prepared for what's to come, and introduces you to the majority of the characters. You know, your evil empire, your authority, kind of scumbag turned rogue, hero, and your main characters. And a lot of times those secondary characters don't get a whole lot of room to jostle. And when you've got a 2.5 hour movie, you usually cut down your cast so you can get everybody's worth knowing, and then you kill half of them off. Well, when you've got multiple movies to play across, you can have those characters that, it's like we know they're there, but we won't know necessarily why they're there or how good they are as part of the team until that second chapter.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm expecting here is because, yeah, you're right. A lot of people, that's one of the complaints I've even seen from Zack Snyder fans. It's like they introduce this really cool character and then they don't do anything. Well, that's because their part in this is being saved for chapter 2.
We hope, yeah. So, okay. Well, Allan, you're the only one that's actually seen it, and no, don't give us a lot of spoilers. But is some of this criticism unfounded, or is some of this? I mean, you said you enjoyed it, right?
Well, again, go back to be a writer. There's 5 plots, maybe 6 plots.
Yes.
In every story ever written, there's only 5 or 6 plots. So to say something is derivative is to really not quite get the word. Derivative doesn't really cover it. Again, like Patrick Stewart, I will apply sci-fi and all sci-fi genre to Shakespeare. It's not that particular Shakespeare, it's your version of it. Because you're going to say funny things, you're going to do funny objects, you're going to do things that are, well, according to the laws of physics, maybe not quite possible yet, but it's how you're going to do them. How are you going to present it? How well are you going to act it? Are you going to suspend disbelief? And it's a Zach movie, and everybody's you can tell everybody's kind of bought in.
Yeah.
You can tell nobody's here for a quick paycheck. Everybody's kind of like, hey,
They're
if this
committed.
works, I might not have to work again for 10 years.
Right.
So there's some effort in it. It looks good. It's got a nice feel to it. It feels like a Zach movie.
Right.
It looks like a Zach movie. It plays like a Zach movie. So if you're a fan of that style and genre, you enjoyed the movie.
Okay.
I can get behind that. But, you bringing that up, especially when you talk about being a writer, one of the things I was taught years ago it's like hanging around guys like you and, Aubrey and all those, Dave Blaylock, people like that, is that, you basically come to learn that your book is not about the story. It's about you taking a story that people are familiar with and putting it into a brand new style setting that it hasn't been put into before. It's more your world and how this story works in that than anything else. Because I've heard you guys talk about, stories that y'all are working on, and it's like, okay, this sounds like what he was working on. But then I read the 2 books, and even though it may be the exact same plot points, it's 2 completely different, incredibly enjoyable stories.
Yeah, I think I think people just get too hung up on. I mean, coming up with something brand new out of the box that nobody's ever thought of before, good luck. I mean, how do you do that? So why not just fall into a genre and do your version of that or something?
Well, if you go back and take a movie like Aliens and then go back to the 50s and look at a movie called Attack of the Lizard Men, you will find that either on purpose or accidentally, they are almost the exact same movie. One of them was made for $1.95 and a box of chicken and some bad rubber suits. The other one is a movie that set a genre standard for all time.
Despite being a later
However,
film.
they are, there's only so many ways you can have the critter eating the crew.
I was just thinking of something. If you want to do it the right way, what you do is on the front end, you say, we are paying homage to this, or this, or something like that. And then you, I just think of what a big success the King Kong movie was that Peter Jackson made. I'm paying homage to the first little King Kong movie I saw as a kid.
Well, see, I don't like
you get away with it.
I don't like using that term. I like I more often when someone says I'm paying homage, I immediately think it's a pretentious auteur. I don't care about their story anymore. I don't care about their setting anymore. But when they say when they give you that quick story at the beginning about how I was growing up, I was inspired by King Kong and the various kaiju movies out of Japan, and now I'm gonna bring you the Lost King, Kong Godzilla Lost Kingdom. It's like when you talk about how you were inspired when you were young by these movies. you're still paying homage, but it doesn't come off as pretentious, so it actually sells the story to me better.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we got to all get caught up and watch Godzilla -1 because apparently that's like the best movie of the year.
Yeah.
So we're behind the time. So, but anyway, we will get to that because that one looks cool. You're listening to Geek Tank Radio. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to turn the corner and talk about music.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Someone should throw their microphones into the fires of Mount Doom. The Geek Patrol is back.
I thought you had yours reinforced, Alan, that fire won't kill him, right?
Not going to bother my microphone at all.
Okay.
Yeah, but if we throw them in, we might get some with stun settings finally. It's only been 8 years.
Okay, sounds good. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Alan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And we are joining you here on 98.1 The Max, a classic rock station. And so this conversation we think is fitting. And I also think it speaks to modern media delivery systems versus the old delivery systems, I think. But anyway, one thing I love about Max is you might make an offhand comment to Max and you can see the wheels turning behind his eye. Like suddenly, if he's interested in something or if he finds this to be something that's, worth his effort, he'll put his effort in and he will go down, he'll explore it and examine it. Here's what I said. So I was talking to Max and I said, I felt like listening to the Smiths, I'm a Smiths fan. Okay. So I said, I did something unique the other day. Instead of just picking and choosing, because I listen to Spotify and everything, instead of just picking and choosing the songs I wanted to hear, I listened to the entire album. And it's been a long time since I've done that with, generally I just have my song list. And I was it basically took me way back in time, Alan. It reminded me of the days when you actually bought records and you put it on a turntable and you let the whole thing play and you read the album cover and everything while you listen. And I told Max, I said, it's a whole different experience when you listen to a complete album versus just picking a song here and there. And Max, you went off and did this on your own, and you said it was a pretty interesting, because your generation doesn't do that.
Well,
right?
not only did I tap into like rock albums, I'm just going to list the albums that I listen to anyways. I listened to the Joshua Tree first, which is a pretty good example. Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. But then it got me thinking about classical music, like different symphonies, like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. What it really intrigued me about it is like the idea of viewing not just viewing like the famous stuff like Ode to Joy from the Ninth Symphony in isolation, but viewing it as part of a whole, kind of like a book. And it'd be like if you only read a single chapter from that book. I feel like listening to an album or listening to an entire symphony kind of broadens your horizons. It kind of allows you to listen to it as a complete story, which I really enjoyed, because I feel like a lot of what we do is singles and piecemeal. I think we kind of need to tap into that idea of, well, because even if the album isn't always super strong, the better songs kind of carry the weaker ones because it's more of a journey, not necessarily like an isolated incident.
Yeah, that was something we discussed. Yeah, a weaker, I don't want to, but I guess it's true. Some songs are not as solid as others, but the whole experience, I don't know. And I thought it was worth exploring because all of us grew up listening to albums and we remember the experience of sitting there, and especially if it had cool artwork or if they had the lyrics on the sleeve or something. But it was an experience. So, but go ahead, Alan, because this is right in your heyday.
You are dead center of this. In that case, I'll give you a couple of quick pieces of homework there to listen to. Go look up the Alan Parsons Project.
Turn up a friendly card.
Well,
No.
I'm going to point out of Tales of Mystery and Imagination and iRobot. These are two albums based on sci-fi literature. Well, iRobot, of course, is Asimov,
Isaac Asimov.
and Tales of Mystery and Imagination were the works of Edgar Allan Poe. And these are musical journeys. And The Who took it to the nth degree by putting out a full rock opera, Tommy.
Yeah.
And even though these songs are still played in isolation, especially Pinball Wizard, they are all part of a very, very set journey for this for the protagonist of the opera.
The most obvious one, of course, is Pink Floyd's The Wall, but
oh yes,
but
amazing storytelling.
But I also think there are elements of this in any album. That's all. I mean, because this is a period in time. They had a certain things going on in their band at the time, and I do think it's similar to a symphony.
And now it's also kind of some albums the story isn't like as obvious in others. I'll just kind of pick on one album I was listening to. I won't list the name, but I liked the music and everything, but I didn't feel a complete story. But now that you're saying it, Joe, where it's like a snapshot in time of this is where the artists were in their particular time of life and everything, and it's like, all right, maybe it's a collection of photos rather than like a reel on like a film, like on a film, like a film negative, something like that.
Well, and especially if you know about the history of a band and you're like, okay, well, this is the point where they actually finally let Ringo say something, or they let George Harrison, and it sounds a lot different than when it was just Paul McCartney.
Or in the case of Rumors, it was about the dysfunction inside Fleetwood Mac because of the fact that they were all in relationships with each other, and so they're literally having to make music together, even though romantically they're torn apart.
Right. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cool things that, and then you hear that come across. So.
Exactly, and that's why you go back to pick on your classical music of take anything by, you can get into Handel's Water Music, you can get into Wagner's The Rings, you can get into all of these things which were both a complete story and a point in time in history, because when you listen to the music and you take a quick snapshot of when it was made, you sometimes kind of get the subversive nature of music and what was the story they were really telling at the time.
Exactly. And I'm going back to another classical music incident, something I learned about like with Ludwig van Beethoven. Not only was he experiencing deafness when he was writing the Ninth Symphony, but Napoleon was literally invading Vienna at the time.
Exactly.
And so he's trying to
going on in the world.
He's trying to proclaim peace at a time when Napoleon was invading the half of the world.
No, all that. I mean, that's good because you're making me think of the hippie generation. We got so much good music out of that, and then you think of the turmoil in the world as that's,
you take a look at you look at like Jim Croce, taken from us way too soon, but you listen to his albums, and it's just amazing. Or Cat Stevens. Oh, yeah, there's a lot here.
I think this is cool. And then the other part of that is, Max, what's different for your generation is for us to just the simple thing of us listening to an album required some effort. You had to go to the store. You had to get it. You had to take the time to put it on a turntable. And it was more of an event than it is today. And I think making music an event, you actually get more out of it. So we're going to continue this conversation when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. David Hasselhoff's lawyers are waiting outside. The Geek Patrol is back.
They've basically taken a presidency there.
Well, also, Allan illegally recorded him, and, he doesn't go for that.
I did not illegally do anything. I deny everything categorically.
Okay, yeah, we probably shouldn't use the word illegal on the air.
And it's in German. Does that count?
Yeah. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And I think this is a fittingly appropriate conversation. We even said, we're here on 98.1 The Max. We should be talking music more. Music is just as geeky as anything else. And we were sharing an experience that, well, Max, you didn't grow up like we did. We grew up with albums, cassettes, 8 tracks. I hate to say it, but listening to music became more of an experience, and we encourage you to listen to a full album versus just picking and choosing. You said it was really a really interesting experience for you. And Brandon, you're kind of in an in-between generation. You had records as a kid, but you were there when CDs became hot, right?
Dude, it's like I had vinyl.
Yeah.
I grew up in a house that had one of those console stereos. It had, it was one of the first ones to have, audio cassettes. Mm-hmm. It had an 8-track player. It had the turntable. As I grew up, I got to watch things go from, because cassettes were available when I was a kid, but then I got to watch cassettes go into CDs, go into MP3s, go into digital streaming. I've got to experience all of that. And I will tell you this, nothing will move your soul like listening to something on vinyl.
I don't know what it is, because technically, it's probably not as crisp as digital or something, but there is something about vinyl.
It's like trying to explain to somebody who's only ever read a book on a Kindle or some sort of app on their phone what it's like to genuinely hold a paperback in your hand in the middle of the summer while you're riding the bus back and forth to wherever it is you're going because you're not old enough to drive yet, and your hands are sweaty, and the paperback is basically, it's used, it's falling apart. There's a textile, it's an experience, and that's what you got with vinyl is because you had to slide it out of the thing. You were very careful so that you didn't scratch anything up. You placed it. Then you had, a lot of us with turntables didn't have that automatic thing where you hit the button and it put the needle exactly where it needed to start before it started moving. You had to balance that needle perfectly in the ridge.
Yeah.
I will say something, though, like me working in radio, one of my simple pleasures that I have, like when I'm on break, is I get to take advantage of the fact that I work on a station that has really good speakers and I have good headphones. And so when I'm bored, I like every now and then like listening to music through the good speakers and through my good headphones. And I will say with modern technology, it can kind of bring out the beauty of certain old hits and everything. Like, wait a second, I've never heard that sound before in such and such song.
That's true. Some songs are made to be heard on headphones.
I will give you straight up, Max. You're absolutely right when it comes to a lot of music. There's a clarity you get with modern technology you didn't get back then. But there's a textile experience. It's like you're sitting there, you're wearing your headphones. I mean, it's like you can zone out the world. But something embeds itself in your soul when it's going on while you're in the midst of some of the most mundane conversations you'll ever have. And you hear Kiss's music from the Elder in the background playing, I'm Just a Boy, or something along those lines. And there's something almost where you take a rock song and make it folksy. And it just gets embedded in your soul. It's weird. And, Max, I know you're big into Japanese culture, feudal Japanese. Try listen if you can ever find a pressed Japanese album. Listen to it; it's amazing.
Yeah, and get a hold of a good stereo system too.
Vinyl has one experience that is totally unique to vinyl, and that is the absolute palatable experience of anticipation from the moment the needle touches the vinyl until something starts. Because you get the audible click. There is a distinct sound when the needle, which is pressing down into the delicate vinyl with the force of an elephant, and you'll actually hear that into the vinyl, and then you hear just the vibration of the vinyl before you come back around and the music actually begins.
Yeah, every little piece of lint.
Well, going back to the whole Japanese discussion, this whole element of vinyl kind of makes me think of the idea of perfect imperfection. Like there's a whole Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi, and it's all about embracing the beauty of the imperfection, embracing the rustic, embracing the unpolished and everything. And so the idea of bringing music to life through something that's almost as bringing music to life, which is almost like a perfect and angelic concept into an imperfect medium like vinyl is kind of an interesting. It's a literal match made in heaven.
That's funny you say.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like we've said in the past. Sometimes you might if you listen to a live performance, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things in there, but there's something about the energy of a live performance that.
And you bring up rustic. And think about it. Have you ever gone on a walk with drumsticks? Allan knows exactly where I'm coming from.
That's random.
Everything in nature makes music.
Yes.
And you become a part of that. And there's something about listening to those old albums that we talked about. I brought up when Allan brought up Alan Parsons Project, I brought up Turn of a Friendly Card. As a kid, it's a 5-track, 15-minute long song.
Yes.
And it changes the type of music it is across the board. And this is something my mom introduced me into at the same time she was introducing me to Dungeons and Dragons. And I see the medieval feeling in it. And as an adult listening to it now, it still gives me that nostalgic feeling. It still feels like it's a part of me. But I now see the metaphor for addiction and gambling and how much, the world can tear you apart just because of that little bit of hope you may have. And it's just, there's something about being a part of that feels amazing.
And there is the walking with drumsticks is also where tap dancers used to get their inspiration for their beats.
Oh, they're
It
just
would
clicking
come
along
from the street.
Yeah.
And you would listen to the staccato of the world around you.
I mean, there's I'd say Japanese like ancient music is really good at embracing that because a lot of their instruments try to embrace the sound of different like elements of nature, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you know why there's a difference between Asian music and Western music?
Okay.
Enlighten me.
A horse.
Okay.
The
clippity
galloping
clop.
beat of a horse.
All right. Hey, you guys, gosh, the show, we're out of time. However, let's make a resolution this year to talk more music because this was good stuff. But it's time to get out of here. So on behalf of my buddies, so until next week, we're on sign off. I'm Joe Thorderson. This is the Geek Patrol. I'm Joe Thorderson.
I'm Allan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Brandon Olmstead reminding you to get out there and make your own music so we can make fun of it.